Thank you,
Not a
Shaji,
statement, I'm
and very
asking
good
a
afternoon
question.
to all of you. I think these are very loaded points which Shaji wants me to answer at this house, and I'm sure the answers will be echoed. But let me just take a step backward, and let us understand what already, I think Dr. Khare Sahab has already explained the entire genesis of the industry. I will not go into that. But just to quickly take from the time when this industry was growing, and obviously huge congratulations to the entire cable industry who actually made the entrepreneurship industry. Today we are talking of, I am in a place where we talk of entrepreneurships and startup, and the entire country is looking forward for that. That startup and entrepreneurship happened with this group, the cable group, possibly 25 years back, and it was obviously going in the direction of obviously market related growth, and it was moving in the right direction. I think it only happened when the other stakeholders came into picture, and then every stakeholder, whether it was from international or national, all saw that there was a huge cream pie in this country to use it and devour it, and possibly to scuttle some of the, I would say, in a small way, non-organized platforms which were working strongly to take it in a different direction. And if you recall the time from 95 to 2002, I think both Dr. Khare and Dr. Rastogi mentioned, I remember the percentage growth of the pay content was 500% in just 5 years' time. So that was the time possibly the stakeholders themselves realized that there needs to be some kind of a method in madness. So obviously it was the stakeholders who went to government, who that time TRI was not even there. When the TRI came into picture in 2004-5, that was the first time when already the CAS enactment kind of happened, and it was with some kind of a formula. That time it was a very, very rudimentary formula which was given of ₹5, etc., all over the place, which was not liked by anybody, and the the CAS was lying in a limbo for 5, 6, 7 years. Again, it was realized that the formula given by some of the stakeholders to make their own set was, and the big four maybe, whoever came there, the entire ownership of the pie which was coming from the customer, or rather the business ecosystem, was being controlled by them. So again, it was becoming a very important issue for the distribution groups to ensure that you get a proper share in that system. Otherwise, it was becoming more and more difficult that how can you continue to please the pay content owners and continue to have your own growth. So possibly the stakeholders went to try once or twice or thrice. And then finally it was agreed that let us have some kind of system, although the industry had grown on our own and it was completely on our own. Now you go to the 3 TRI regulations, mainly when the DAS came, which was just a DAS, and which was the formula was to have the old analog pricing which was given, and on that some 35% or 40% was accepted. The model was purely wholesale pricing, which was also affecting the price model, but still it was independent. And it was felt that possibly the growth was going on, but it was also felt that there was a complete skewness in the models of the stakeholders itself. And again that issue came up. Even in that point of time, if you recall, all the 3 stakeholders said that we are not making money and there's a problem, but actually one of the groups was making money, which was possibly the big 4 content pay groups at some level, because it was a wholesale pricing and the pricing formula was derived from the analog method. That is how finally the so-called MRP method of the new NTO came into place to ensure possibly a bit more realistic view that all the stakeholders have some kind of a say. And the concept of this NCF, which was not there earlier, means for supplying a network there is a cost. I agree that is a cost between the so-called head-end provider and the network provider together. There has to be a basic cost, you cannot deny it. And even if you do not give a single channel, or if you give a single channel, that cost has to be there as your own. I think that concept was accepted by the regulator, let us agree on that, which gave some kind of a viability that yes, there is a minimum basic amount with just the free content. So on the assumption that even if there is no pay content, you are allowed to earn a minimum amount of whatever was agreed. Now coming to NTO 1 and NTO 2, the difference, obviously NTO 2 is also gone into some other issues. Shaji just mentioned that, all the NTOs and regulations are not liked by the broadcasters. If you observe it, Shaji, it is the big four pay groups who don't like it. I'm sure that some of my friends who are sitting here from the broadcasting community both FTA channels and the other channels, may not mind it so much because the growth of the content, I will come to that quickly, but let me finish off this one. The issue and the growth of the content in this country has been kind of completely monopolized and halted by some of the big four groups, and the small players and the individual aggregator players could not move in that direction. So, problem what happened is that these four continued to hold the full fray, and then the NTO2 was realized that after you have got a semblance possibly in the market, which was said that yes, there is some kind of a shareholding pattern which is happening, it was a tough time for the entire industry to come with that. The NTO2 only thing which I believe personally is that it is possibly the TRAI has taken a measure that now that possibly you guys have stabilized, let us give the benefit to the consumers and let us have the market in that regulated format, which may or may not go in the direction because there are already concerns in the court and in the market, but it may take its own time. But even if you hold it for a while, for 2 minutes, there are two more areas which I want to definitely inform. I'm thankful to Mr. Prashant and Khare Saab and Dr. Rastogi also. The content issue. I think we have not utilized the content of the platform like the way it should be. You take any example in anywhere in the world of the fiber domain or the cable domain. We have completely restricted or gone ourselves with only the so-called linear platforms of the big broadcasting and thought that content is not my domain at all, I don't have to bother. But as you know, by all rules and regulations, by all the policies, a cable group is allowed to do its own content and make it, and you don't have to necessarily give a satellite content. Today, after the digitalization, you have the ability to do your own vast contents, which you can do 10, 20, 50. There are some MSOs in this country, I hope you're aware, who are giving more than 80, 90 channels, which is of their own so-called VAS, in whichever format. I think we have worked very, very limited way for that. The idea was that we, and today also, it is very important that we should take work behind and see what is happening to the Indian industry of the content consumption. The consumers are the king finally, neither the distribution nor the content in that way. The consumer dictates what behavior pattern we should move ahead. So if you leave aside whatever NTO1 and NTO2 is happening, just imagine that can we have a business models which are more closer to so-called, which the industry and the consumers have adapted up to some level, whether it's the Netflixes and Amazons of the world. We have not really even thought that there can be a huge vast ability of using the content which are already there in India in a big way. Dr. Rastogi mentioned that we have so much of content, right from the ancient content of 1940s, whether it's a film, whether it's a, and today's the new areas are, for example, short films. You have the contents of which are aggregated internationally, whether it's a kids or Hollywood or other countries or Korean or Turkish, etc. These are not required in the broadcaster level. I can only tell you that there are in the country, there are some developing new aggregators and the content providers, and you yourself can become a content provider, nobody stops you. And then you can start making this content so alive to make a ARPU benefit in a different way. I agree that there has been an issue of so-called controlling the NCF at 200 channels for 130 and now 160 for X number of channels, but I think that is only the tip of the iceberg. Why should we bother that, okay, FTA, what Mr. Prashant also mentioned, that the FTAs are meant to ensure stability of the network. Today you can compete with so-called OTTs and Netflixes of the world to ensure that nobody can give that number of channels as a FTA. The more important part is that have we done something for the consumer consumption pattern of the media and content to see that what all contents we can give, which is not related to the so-called big four pay groups at all, but you can still make your pay yourself. And that is the strategy which I think more and more groups can start with that. And once you start with that, you can price it at X amount as a bundle, as a la carte, as whichever way. The issue of a la carte versus bundling, I completely agree it is a market-driven thing. It is a consumer-driven thing. The Indian consumer is smart enough to decide whether he wants it or not. Yes, the international behavior pattern has always been that the consumer have always liked to take in a more bouquet format rather than a la carte format. So the requirement of pushing it to a la carte may or may not give a final result to the government and TRI. That's a different story, because we have to assume, and we are the businessmen, we are the marketeers, we know the market better, we know the consumer better. All of you, we have been working for 20, 25 years in this industry. We know what works for the, as Sethia Saab straight away said, it is ultimately the market is known to each and every person who has worked in this industry for last 10, 15, 20 years. And once you work out in that fashion, your requirement of so-called regulations should be kept completely aside. If you ask my personal view, that these regulations should be just seen as a marker to start something, but we have to work in a different direction. For how many years, please tell me, that we have really given a consumer behavior pattern to analyze it? We have the data of the digital data already, which we have all over the place. Have we analyzed them? Have we marketed them in a social platform or any digital format to give any kind of new services, any kind of new additions? I think we are still to do a lot of work in that. We have, Dr. Rastogi mentioned that today the cable operator is so strong that he is so well known to the family, to the full group. You can start giving more and more services which is through the pipe itself, or which is your own content, your own VAS, your own movies. In fact, there is a requirement. We did a small research 1 year back to see that the consumers want today ad-free contents, which hardly anybody is giving. And ad-free contents of any value, which is in an international work or national work, which is given of a good quality, can give a huge benefit for that. So I think these are some of the things which we have to do. The regulations will have their own limitations, I would say, because no regulation is perfect in any way, neither in this country nor anywhere in the world, Shaji. I can assure you that. Because the regulations are given to test a market, and they are given when the industry stakeholders are possibly not getting the right way in their own format. Actually, if you ask me, the regulation was not there at all up to 2005. The industry possibly worked the best. So the regulator will continue to try that there is a semblance of the stakeholders across. But I think we should step aside of the regulator plan, whatever his plan or whatever. We should plan our own, like FMCG companies or any other creative companies now, to formalize in a new direction, because you are having so-called challenge and competition from the big telcos who will come as a complete fiber delivery. You have OTTs. I think we have to adapt in some format and start giving the services in your own way. So one of the ways I already mentioned that you can give 80 or 100 channels of your own. Who is stopping you? You don't have to make a satellite channels of your own at all. आज के दिन में आप लोग केबल में 50 से 100 चैनल अपने आप एग्रीगेट करके अगर 25 रुपए में भी देते हैं, I can assure you 100% of your population will take those contents. आप उसके बाद देखेंगे कि आपका जो choice रहेगा of so-called big pay issues, जिसमें कि आपको लगता है कि आपका profit कम है ज़्यादा. See, you have to increase your own profitability. At the end of it, we also have business. At the end of it, अगर अपना profitability है, तो हमको उसके लिए काम करना है. हमको सबके profitability के लिए जोड़ नहीं देना है. If I am running the business, it is important कि how do I run my own business. And that is the concept which our friendly broadcasters are doing, and that is the concept which we should do more aggressively. And I can assure you, just now I am very happy to know that Dr. Rastogi mentioned that we will have a collaboration of all the so-called small head-end operators, head-end owners. I would say that today India is looking for two things. One is, you must have heard the word MSME. We call medium scale level players and the entrepreneurs players. You are all there. Today, even in the MSO regime, I'm sorry, Sethia Saab, I don't mean you, but there are 5-6 players only who have taken the mantle to do it. But it is you all who are having, averaging from anywhere from 1 lakh to 4 lakh or 5 lakh or 10 lakh, who can really go the market in a different way. And I completely subscribe to that fact. And if there is a kind of a plan and a strategy, you can see, again, the same ownership and strategy and entrepreneurship which happened possibly 20 years back should come into this forum. And there are the guidance, there are the mentors who can always give it. Obviously, there are directions from people like Mr. Sethia, who was himself an entrepreneur. He started, and today he's sitting on, say, a huge number of customers who are completely loyal to him. These are the examples which we have to make in each market. Each market is different. Please also appreciate that you have the huge capability, because your each market in cable, you have the ability to give the content whichever you want in your own way in any region, which possibly even a OTT or a DTH will have their own problems. OTT has a different plan, so I'm not comparing them also with the so-called fiber broadcasting delivery, which I agree completely. But if you compare with your satellite-based services, whether it's a HITS or whether it's a DTH, I think the pure cable group has a huge ability to do that. We have not formalized that. So the takeaways are that yes, there will be difficult regulations at times, which happens even in Ofcom and it happens in US, etc. But it is up to us to make the market. I think we should not be too much disturbed with the kind of so-called regulations which they have given. We have to show a place in our own entrepreneurship way that what we can do, you can say indirectly by business-wise, is scuttling this regulation and making our own business sense and ensuring the customer is finally the king and I can give him whatever he wants and I build a market for him because I know him better than anybody else, including the regulator or the government. I think that is the final takeaway and that is how we should move ahead.